All right, before introducing our next guest, let's first welcome back Dr. Melinda Anderson, Executive Director of NACADA. Melinda, welcome back.
It is good to be back, Matt. Always good to see your shiny, smiley face. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You're going to have a busy couple weeks. We're recording this in on March 7th. This is going to get posted on our middle of March episode. But you are on like some marathon run going through these region conferences.
Yes, I am. I'm on that beautiful treadmill. It is spring, and that means for Nakata Regional Conference season. And so I am speaking with you from beautiful Norfolk, Virginia, which many people don't know, but that is also Chesapeake, Virginia is my home. So I do live in Kansas, but I still live in Chesapeake, Virginia. So it's nice to kind of be back in my old stomping grounds, but then also being here doing really good work for Nakata. And so this is Region 2. And so then I'll be off to Region 1 in Mystic, Connecticut, and then to 7 next week. And then on my way to see you in Region
Yes.
9 in Orange County. So, and I've never been to that part of the woods in California. So I'm really excited to see you, of course, and then to be able to enjoy Region 9 with you. So, are you
Yes.
ready?
I am ready. Well, I'll put it this. I'll be ready by the time we have this conference. But I'm so looking forward to getting to see you again. So,
Yeah, I'm
just a few,
excited.
few more days. Few more days.
Few more days.
Yes, and we're both here today so we can interview a really amazing higher education professional, and that is with Shea Ellingham. And Shea's first experience with NACADA started with the 2010 Region Conference in Seattle, and Shea was new to the role of Manager of Academic Advising Services at Mount Royal University and was hungry for professional development in the advising world. And the very next year, she had the privilege of chairing the Region 8 Calgary Conference, and after that, never looked back. In addition to chairing and co-chairing Region 8 conferences, Shea has also had the privilege of working with the Advising Communities Division as the co-chair of the Canadian Advising Community. And in 2017, Shea also became a member of the Region Review Committee, which was asked to undertake the task of surveying members to determine how best to meet the professional development of members and the existing region structure. And as Shea has grown professionally, she took a step forward in her career and moved into the role of the Director of Admissions and Recruitment at MRU. And even though her involvement with advising has changed, she does get to work with an amazing team as they welcome new classes of students to their institution. And academic advising will always be near and dear to Shea, and she will never regret a moment of her volunteer time with NACADA. And when Shea returned to higher education as a mature student, her goal as a single mother of 3 young children was to finish her undergraduate degree and find a career that would allow her to support her family. She quickly realized that she wanted to remain in higher education as a career and earned a Master of Arts degree in communications. Shea began her career in higher ed as an instructor and enjoyed working with students, inspiring them to achieve their goals. And this led her to the administration side of education. And once she arrived in management roles, she knew that she had found her place and a career that was a great fit for her skills and interests. Shay, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Matt.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Hi, Melinda. Really great to be here. Listening to you read that bio, it's just like, oh wow, oh yeah, right. That's a story.
Absolutely. What we love so much is, just talking to Nakata members, but really just getting to know more about the person and their story. And so I'm just really excited. Shay, we connected in the region review work that Matt had mentioned in your bio. And so I'm just really curious, to learn more about you on this podcast. And we have some similarities. We both have backgrounds in communications, and then here we are in higher education, right, in similar fields and tensions. But talk to us a little bit about your path and journey into higher education. Like, what was that moment for you when you were like, okay, I'm enjoying this? Like, what was that moment for you? Can you talk to us about that?
When I right out of high school, I did a couple of years of higher education, and then circumstances changed. I left higher education, focused on building a career a little bit, got married, had my kids. But education was always something that was in the back of my mind as sort of an unfinished uh, aspect of my life. And then as I realized that the marriage was ending, it was a good opportunity for me to sort of focus on, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to move forward? Because, this was a long time ago, 20 plus years ago. And it was like, high school diploma isn't just going to get me what I need. So I need to go back. I need to go back into school. And, the benefits of being a mature student when you go back and you've got a little bit of life experience. And I've told this to school, to teach to students throughout the years. It's not so bad. It's not as hard. And I found it wasn't as hard as I remembered it coming out of high school, because you have that work ethic. You're able to schedule your time in. And I really enjoyed higher education. For me, it was an opportunity to explore new ideas and to think deeply about things, and just to sort of engage with material that I hadn't had an opportunity to do in my work life, and certainly not as a single parent of 3 little kids. So it was really sort of a great opportunity to focus on me, get a little bit of self-development in there, and find my own self, right? Find out who I was and what I wanted to accomplish in my life.
Right, right. And so you finish your degree, you're moving forward, and then you said it's higher education. What was your first position? Was it directly into academic advising more so immediately?
No, actually, I had to think for a moment. That's why I'm scratching the brain here a bit. It was like, no, while I was doing my master's degree, one of a colleague of mine who was in the master's program talked to me about that she was teaching at DeVry, and we had DeVry Institute of Technology here in Calgary, and she was telling me about her experiences there, and I was like, I could do that. So so that's what I did. Actually, I contacted DeVry and I started teaching, and that was my first gig into higher education while I was still in my master's degree. And I thought, oh, I should get my PhD and I'm going to be a professor.
Mm.
But then while I was teaching at DeVry, another opportunity came up where they were actually looking for an associate dean, and I could do that. So, and that's what I did. So, anytime anybody's just sort of put a challenge in front of me, this I know about myself. If there's a challenge out there and I go, I could do that. That's kind of where I follow my path. So, teaching first, then administration. So,
Wow. So then you got bit by the admin bug.
you bet.
I love that. I just wrote that down. I can do that. Well, that's a very powerful testament, when people think, can I go back? Is it too late? Can I do something different, right? Which is, I think a lot of people have been asking themselves, with the pandemic, is this really what I want? And I tell people, yeah, you can. It's not too late, right? If you're asking yourself those questions, it's for a very important reason. So thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure. It's true. You can reinvent yourself. And I think you're right. I agree 100%. Through this pandemic, people are doing that all over the place.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean we're seeing that like all over, just like you're saying, and it's something where we have different interests, and like you're saying, you had various opportunities you were able to explore and kind of see what fits, what's something that you can see yourself doing, and if that means that we reinvent ourselves or change every few years, I mean, then that's part of it.
Right.
Yeah. And a couple of things is, you also, when you were in a manager role, you were the manager of academic advising services, and then moved on to the director position for admissions and recruitment. Can you talk about both those roles, like what those entailed, and kind of what led you to the admission side?
Sure, love to. So, academic advising in Canada is somewhat different in a lot of places, although we're seeing a bit of a shift now where there's not a lot of upward movement. It's almost like you get into a manager role and it depends on institution wise, but I certainly at Mount Royal, there just wasn't a place to go further unless I did do that academic side of things, like go back into the academic side of the house. But at Mount Royal, academic advising services, we're sort of a hybrid model where we had some centralized advising, some decentralized advising. So I had a small subset of the advising community reporting directly to me as the manager, but also had a larger mandate to sort of serve the community-wide community with sort of that professional development aspect of things. And I was so fortunate when I came into this role to have the opportunity to get connected with NACADA, because it really, for me, sort of provided an opportunity to sort of grow that professional development on our campus and take advantage of all of the great things that NACADA was doing, and sort of become that intermediary, sort of saying, look, this is open to everybody. You can all do this. This is a wonderful opportunity. But after about, a decade of doing that, realizing that, there was things that I wanted to do, things I wanted to explore, and not a lot of opportunities to go higher in the advising only field. This opportunity came up when my good friend, who was in this position of director of admissions and recruitment, when she was going to retire, and then that whole thing came along, and Shea was like, I could do that. So it was kind of one of these things where I'm like, I don't know if this is a natural progression, but it certainly was an opportunity that I thought I could challenge myself. I could get into a little bit of a different aspect of the student life cycle and the applicant funnel, and sort of expand. So recruitment to me has been sort of the biggest learning, since I haven't been doing a lot of that. Admission stuff I knew, but the recruitment area was certainly a big growth opportunity for me, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. So.
Right. Well, I love the way that you talked about it being the student life cycle, because as in my previous role to this one, I was in enrollment functions as well. And it is wonderful, right, to have that perspective, I think is probably the best way to say it. When you think about the life cycle of a student, from the recruitment, being admitted, and then coming into that advising and then registration transitional process, right? Whether it's first year or transfer students, how do you think that that vantage point is going to help you when you think broadly about that student life cycle?
That's a great question, Melinda, because it's certainly one that we've been looking at. So I have a very brand new team. So not only did I come into this position brand new, but I have a brand new manager of admissions, because the other manager of admissions retired. So we sort of had a real shift in our whole department. And it's been really good for us to sort of re-examine what we want to accomplish and how we want to look at the students we're bringing in, and sort of some of the policies we have in place. So I think I'm always, when I get these emails from applicants who are like wanting an exception or looking for some more information, that advising hat comes on, and it's like, okay, how can I support you as an individual? You're not just an application number in the cycle. You're not just another applicant in the funnel. What can I do to help you? So that's really been a good opportunity for me to sort of see things from that perspective. I won't be able to help everybody. I know that it's just not going to be that easy, but that advising heart is there.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for connecting those dots, because it is just, you're always, that heart of the advisor is just, it doesn't matter where you kind of go in the student life cycle. I always think that it's always there. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, there's
Can you
always.
talk to us a little bit? Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
I was just gonna say, there's always an impact no matter what level you're at. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, like whether it's that one touch point of a student sending an email, just wanting to know what the admission requirements are, or just reviewing their transcript with them, or even once they get accepted, then they get to meet with their advisor or their department. There's always someone along the way that's going to hopefully be able to connect with them.
Exactly. No, that's a good point. I was just wanting to know a little bit more about your institution, Mount Royal, and the kind of students that you serve. If you could just talk a little bit about that for the audience, because I know many of us are listening, might be, in the US and wanting to know a little bit more about institutions in Canada. So.
Happy to chat about that. So Mount Royal is an undergraduate university, and within the landscape of the province of Alberta where we are, there's only 2 undergraduate universities focused, so that we don't offer any graduate programs. We have other polytechnics that they will do a little bit of a different focus, but our major uh, offering, we have undergraduate degrees in arts and science and health and community studies and education. We have some professional programs in nursing and midwifery and aviation diploma, actually, and social work. But for the most part, the students that are coming here, well, actually, we became a university in 2009, and before that, we were a college.
Mm.
So we have a very long legacy, 100-year legacy of being a college where people would come to start their degree and maybe finish a diploma, but then go on to another institution in order to complete their degree. So when we became a university in 2009, we really had to focus and shift on educating the community around us that Mount Royal was not only a good place to start, but it was also a good place to finish their degree. But still undergraduate focused. We won't necessarily expand into graduate programs at all. That's not sort of an area of focus for us. And so having done that and having sort of staked out that territory, we also want to focus on the student experience and making the student experience at Mount Royal the best it can possibly be for students who come here. I mean, we do have students that come here and never leave. They come here, they get their degree, then they start working at the institution and they become sort of those cheerleaders that we've grown on our own, right? Just because of their experience here at Mount Royal has been great. We're largely also a commuter campus, so a lot of our students are from in and around the Calgary area and in southern Alberta. But one of the things that I've started to do through recruitment now that I'm in the position is we're sort of expanding more nationally and trying to recruit students from across the country and internationally as well. We're going to grow that as well. But yeah, we want to celebrate Mount Royal across this great country of Canada that we have.
Wow, that's wonderful. So you're coming into this space of really having people think differently about um, how you are positioning yourself in the marketplace. And so that, I mean, for me, I feel like that's exciting. I don't know if you feel like that's exciting, Shay, because you're changing hearts and minds and you're shifting culture, right? When you think about shifting yourself in the marketplace. But from a heart of an advisor, and then you put on the hat of an enrollment manager, you're just sharing the goodness and the quality and the value of an education at your institution that you know is going to change the way that people operate in the world, and who they become in the world. And so that's always good news that you want to share. So I'm very excited to hear that for you and your institution. So I'm going to be cheering you on. I'm going to have to come check out your campus and spread the good news and wear t-shirts and do all that good stuff.
You're welcome. You're welcome to come at any time, Melinda. Awesome.
And one of the other things at Mount Royal that your institution does is you were also quoted in an article that was titled "Work Integrated Learning Opportunities Prepare Career-Bound Graduates." And so it talked about how with Mount Royal University, like a key piece is the industry relevant experience as part of the undergraduate journey. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. You've been doing your homework. I like that. It's great. So one of the focus major focus of our government. So in Canada, education is funded provincially. So we get a large part of our funding from our provincial governments, and that's for publicly funded education. Private for-profit or private education is very rare in Canada. So we're very tied to sort of government initiatives and wherever their focus is. And work integrated learning has certainly been a focus of our government here over the last couple of years. And they really want to expand those opportunities for students to come to a higher education institution and then get some real world skills that they can take with them into the workplace afterwards. And even before this as a focus, a lot of our programs have had internships and co-op programs. So we have opportunities for our students to take their education and add in that working aspect of things. And that's definitely a key area of growth for Mount Royal. So in many of our degrees, and I think almost all of them, we have that opportunity for students to explore a co-op or a work integrated learning experience. So one of the key aspects of our education degree is our education students, they come into their first year of education, they are in the classroom in their first year. And in a lot of institutions, that doesn't necessarily happen to your third or fourth year before you get into the classroom. But we want students to have that experience early on. We have, and of course, our nursing and midwifery practices are certainly in clinical experiences right out of the gate, because we want them to have that experience so that they know it's going to be a good fit for them early on, rather than waiting till they're almost graduating and then realizing, yeah, I'm not cut out for this kind of work. So that's one of the things that we like to celebrate at Mount Royal, is the fact that you can get your education, your 4-year degree, but you're also allowing and having the opportunity to explore sort of those real world applications of your skills.
Yeah, I wish more schools had something like this, because just like you're saying, like you can get to your junior, senior year and then be like, yeah, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And now I'm really struggling with these classes and I don't see myself utilizing this degree after I graduate. So, and in that article too, like you were quoted as saying that these activities not only help with preparing for the future, but they make the educational journey meaningful to a student's life. And everything's all about connecting engagement, and this is a perfect way of doing that.
It's true. I mean, I've really like to promote the way that students can personalize or customize their degree. And it's not only with work integrated learning opportunities, it's also with adding a minor. It's also with making the most of your liberal arts education and finding courses that really speak to the individual, right? It's not just a checkbox. It's not just a fill in the blank, get your degree. It's a, what does this mean? How is this going to be meaningful to you? So we really try to promote that.
Absolutely. Oh, that makes my heart so happy. I have that conversations, even, when I'm not right, technically, quote unquote, in the office, just talking to friends when they're thinking about career changes and what, what's next for me, or what does this look like? The idea of, we're all always learning and growing and thinking differently. And when I worked at a previous institution that was liberal arts focused, majors and careers aren't linear, right? So how are you thinking and learning and acquiring knowledge that helps shape your lenses, thinking about that way. And so even as professionals, we should be thinking the same thing. And so that takes us into like our next question about how did you discover NACADA? When you think about professional development opportunities and growth and development, how did you first come to know about NACADA, Shea?
Well, I had applied for the manager of academic advising services at Mount Royal. I was moving in from another institution in the city, and I was a department chair, actually. So, and in that experience, I really got introduced to the idea of advising and working with students in that first year experience. And then when I wanted to move into this manager position, I was doing my homework, checking out professional development, checking out, professional associations. I came across NACADA, and then was really happy to find that information and be able to utilize that information as I moved into this role. And I think I started my job here at Mount Royal in September, and the conference was in January. And things happened so fast, because at that conference in January, I said, yep, I'll be a conference chair. No problem. I can do that. It's coming to Calgary. So it was just kind of a whirlwind. It was just kind of jump in with both feet. And it was really a good opportunity for me to sort of see another world that I hadn't been exposed to before. And it was great. It was really good. It was kind of like feeding me from what I knew was out there and what I needed and what I wanted to get from that, engaging with the student experience and meeting students where they're at. So it was really fortuitous in that way, serendipitous almost.
Right, right. So you jumped in with both feet, and so you led a conference. And so, what have your other roles have been in NACADA?
So after the conference in 2011, I joined the steering committee as
Oh,
the one of the Alberta liaisons, and really wanted to focus firstly on growing NACADA across the within the province of Alberta. So jumped in by starting to do annual advising symposia where we could really promote the value of advising across the province and invite people to come in and start honing their skills so that they could do conference proposals and feel like they could participate more meaningfully at the region level. And that was a good opportunity, good learning, and it was a great opportunity to network with. I've met some wonderful people across the province. And then as my time finished on the steering committee, because at that time you could only do 2 terms of 2 years, and then I was looking for something else, and had an opportunity to connect with some individuals across the country, and the advising community for Canadian advising community became an opportunity there. So I jumped in with that and started to network more nationally rather than just sort of staying within our region. Did that national networking. Got an opportunity to present at the Region 5 conference in Toronto. Had a really good experience with that, and met some more people. And then the advising community was really a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. We actually also did a pan-Canadian survey of advising just to find out what advising looks like across this country, and to find out what those shifts and what those differences are, because there are regional differences based on and education systems and the way they work in this country. So that was a lot of fun. And then I think that was what led me to the region review. You know, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I think this would be a good fit for you." And I said, "I can do that." So here we go. And that was a lot of fun as well, because it was great to get involved and just um, help promote what is going on in Canada and sort of bring that to the table. I thought it was really important because Canadians typically, and I'm just going to make a generalized statement here. I think we tend to not sort of stand up and celebrate our own accomplishments and the fact that we have value to add. And I thought that it was important that we start to do that. We can take our place at the table as well, and become that sort of that full partner. Um, so maybe that's a little bit. I'm not sure what that is, but that's the Canadian way. But we kind of just sit back and say sorry a lot. No.
no, no, no. Well, I just love the way that you kind of spoke about how your experiences kind of started, regionally. You took advantage of opportunities as they became available. And then as you started growing your network and met other members, whether they were in an advising community or still within the region, then from, a Canadian perspective, your network just continued to expand. And then when you're on the region review, it's because people knew how dedicated and committed you were to be thinking about these issues differently and from different perspectives, because you had been in a different um, areas of Nakata, right, to have different lenses in terms of how you were thinking through, well, what would this look like if we were to expand regions? And what would this look like if you were in an advising community versus in a regional setting? So just thank you for sharing how that continued to grow. Because I think that when you think about Nakata leaders or members and they're saying, how do I get involved? How does it get started? I think it's really good to always hear about people's pathways, because they're so different and so varied. And they usually start with, maybe where you are or what you care about mostly. And then it starts to expand based on how you know people and what other things you become interested in. So I just always love listening to pathways and Nakata, especially around leadership. So thank you so much for sharing that, Shay.
Oh, my pleasure.
Now, both of you met each other while you were part of the region review?
Yes, that's the first time that I mentioned. Like I kept hearing her name. They're like, "Oh yeah, Shay, she's in Canada." That would be like, "Shay, she's in Canada." It'd always be like that. It wouldn't be just like Shay. He'd be like, Shay, yeah, that's right, she's in Canada. So then I was like, when I first met her, I was like, hey, because I was in the region division rep with Nicole Kent, and Nicole Kent is in Region 8. And so they have provinces in Region 8. And so it's just because when you think about like where the regions, some of them overlap into Canada. And so it's always a beautiful experience when some of your regions overlap into different spaces, like, fours in the Caribbean. And so when you talk to different region chairs, it's wonderful to kind of hear the things that they're thinking about. Because well, when I was Region 2, I had the District of Columbia,
Mhm.
and then the Commonwealth of Virginia, and then I had states. And so I was always talking about, like, in DC is representation now, and then, you're always talking about kind of what other things people are struggling with. But it was just so wonderful to meet her across that table and think through, concerns in the region about how professional development is being delivered. Because as we grew, how do you continue to do that well when you're saying that you're global? And so that was the question we had before us. So it was a lot of work, right, Shay?
Oh, it was. And there was a lot of laughing, even some crying around that table.
Table.
It was it was an education.
Yeah.
That was such an education to be involved in that project, and I was so thankful to have had that opportunity, um, because it actually was my first um, opportunity to have really meaningful work that was done in a remote setting, we were, because we were coming from all different areas of
Hmm.
the country and of North America, of the world actually.
Hmm.
And it was just a really good way for us to sort of have that experience to connect with each other in an authentic way when we weren't already always in the same room around the same table.
That's
And
true.
that was such a good education, such good preparation for that, our pandemic experience. Like, I'm telling you, it was, yeah,
That's a good
anyway,
point. That is a good point because we were already operating that way
yeah.
and using Google Docs and being on Zoom and planning to meet in one central location to do that work. And that work continues on today because now it's led to a structural review that the board approved to be thinking about how do we structure and organize ourselves in order to manage the growth and to embrace our global mission for Nakata. So it's so good to kind of see that what you've done is continuing to live on, and it's going
Mhm.
to be impactful for those who are going to come behind you. So yeah.
Yeah, and kind of going back to you were talking about the reach review. Both of you met as part of that. So you had this reach review committee. You talked a little bit about. I think people can put the pieces together of like what exactly the region review does. But could you talk a little bit more about how the region review came about? What are some of the goals of the region review? And
Um,
um, yeah, just so listeners have a better idea, because they hear committee and maybe they're like, well, how do I even get a part of that?
Right, right. So, so I'll start, Shay, and then definitely for you to fill in. But at the time, when I was region division rep with Nicole Kent, the board of directors had charged the regional division with reviewing the region division to understand more broadly how professional development was being delivered in the region division. So at that time, we have three divisions in NACADA. You have the regional division, you have the administrative division, and you had the advising communities division that had just went through a review. So they had charged the region division with reviewing our particular area. And so in reviewing the region division, we really wanted to understand how professional development was being delivered through all 10 regions. And when you think about the idea that we are a global organization, we had been asked, not specifically for why we were reviewing, but how are we regionally affiliated if we're not covering the globe, right?
Mhm.
So that was one of the subtexts, but really the board was like, please evaluate how professional development is being delivered in the regional setting. And so it launched our work, and it actually ended up being like a really like a almost a 3-year project, really, because Nicole, and I both were doing that for 2 years. And then I went to the board and we were still working on it. And so just really like what Shay was talking about, I think the beauty of the work is that it was a committee that looked broadly at who was invested in this work. So we looked at people who were on the professional development committee. We looked at people who were sitting in different regional spaces. And so, because Shay being in Canada, definitely wanted to have a Canadian perspective on this work. When Mebish Ali was sitting in the Middle East, and so wanting to have another global perspective, if somebody's not sitting within the US. And so we just had different folks that were bringing different perspectives to doing this work. And we put together a survey, launched the survey, did focus groups, and it was very well done, I think, in terms of the way that it was not just quantitative, but qualitative feedback that we got from the membership. And then we did an analysis and then presented the findings to the board. But Shay, is there, you know,
It did turn into a longer project than I think any of us thought it might when we first agreed to participate. But I'm so glad that we did that work, because I think we gave members across the globe an opportunity to participate and engage and give us their understanding, give us their experiences, right? How are you seeking? How do you get your professional development from NACADA? And what is meaningful to you? And I think that was the most important
mhm,
thing that we could do, is just hear right from the members about what they wanted from the association. And I think it's a good foundation for us now as we go into looking at a structural review and finding out how do we want to take that information and grow the association, especially coming out of the pandemic. I think we've seen a lot of I think we had to see a lot of shrinking as far as what we were able to do during those most challenging months and years. Like, whoever thought it was going to be years instead of months? And then now that the world is opening up again, what does that look like, and what is our plan for going ahead?
mhm. That's a powerful point. It's we really wanted to make sure that everybody that could participate did participate. And then after that analysis, it was what are the implications for the information we received, and then recommendations to the board and council. What are the implications of these changes? And so there was an implementation phase, and so now that's what the board and council are currently working through. So, for example, if we were to implement this new structure, right? What is the impact on finances? What is the impact on organizational structure? What is the impact on positions? When you think about how a nonprofit operates, so now it's working its way up in terms of like, okay, so now the rubber meets the road, and so now we're in a structural review. And so that's exactly where that information should be going. So you're absolutely right, Shay. So it was a labor of love is what we kept calling it, because it kept evolving to, if we're going to do it right, let's do it right, because we care about this association. And NACADA it's supposed to grow and live beyond us, right?
Mhm.
And that's what the goal of any work that you do is what you want. And so it took legs and now it's taking flight. So it's pretty cool to watch, because it means so much to a lot of us when you talk to people about when they first get involved with NACADA. And I loved your bio, Shay, about you just this is home. It just becomes like, oh my gosh, I found my place, and then you grow, and it just takes flight in your heart in a way that you're always willing to volunteer and to give your time and talent and energy. So yeah, much like you, Matt, doing these podcasts.
We're trying. We're trying.
We need to turn around and interview you one day.
Eh,
Ooh, that would be
maybe.
fun.
That
That
would
would
be
be fun.
fun, right?
I'm better at asking the questions than giving
As
answers.
Oh.
But Shay, I did want to talk about, it's almost like, there's the saying that the more things change, the more they stayed the same.
Mm.
And so there was an article that you wrote in 2003, and that was like the internet lifestyles, teens and online experience. And in that one, you talked about how teens have the ability to connect in, various ways. So innovative ways, they're very creative. The computer was a tool, and now really at that time when you wrote it isn't a tool, and that it gives them a way to interact with the outside world. And I was just thinking that is essentially how things still are, and even more so. um, do you remember like what got you interested in, like, I let me write an article about
Yeah.
this?
Well, actually, that's my master's thesis.
Hmm.
And it was pre-Facebook. Like, I'm just going to set that foundation pre-Facebook and looking at ways of, so the basis of that research was basically on how users adopt technology and make it fit their lives rather than how the technology changes and how people change the technology. Right. So from that perspective, I was looking at how teenagers were using one very specific tool, MSN Messenger. Right. Remember, this is pre-Facebook. I have to always situate that. So they were using it and how they were using that as part of their exploring their identity and exploring who they were and how they were interacting with their friends and how they were interacting over the internet at that particular time, and using it as a an exploration, right? So that was basically the foundation of a lot of my research and in sort of communications, and how that evolved. I think more along the lines of how I was teaching. I was teaching courses on how computer information technologies, how it shapes society, how it shapes us, but again, firmly rooted in the idea of how the people are using the technology. And I never could have predicted almost 20 years later how that has changed the fabric of social media, and how that's really changed how we see the world, how we interact with the world, how that delivers our information to us, and how we can be so self-selective about what we hear about the world through our social media platforms. So it's been a journey. It's hard to believe, but yeah, all of those that early work was so enlightening, and just sort of to see how it's unfolded. I've always sort of maintained that critical theorist lens of media, and sort of that idea of like, yeah, you just don't take things at face value, right? You have to do the work to become that critical thinker, to actually say, does that sound right? You know, especially over the last 2 years of the pandemic and all of the news that we've been seeing, is like, I don't know. I don't think that rings true. I'm going to do a little bit more research on that.
Yeah, and it reminds me of critical information literacy. So I remember seeing, like, years ago, just seeing kind of the cycle of information, and where it first starts and how it might be on the news or social media. But then as research happens, then that's where, you have the publications that come out. But a lot of that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And many people move on from, I just saw the post on social media or I heard it on the news. And if there was a retraction or some correction, that's usually on the back page of a newspaper for those that still get a paper newspaper. Otherwise, it's a little asterisk at the bottom of an article, like weeks or months or even years after.
Right. It's true. And the news life cycle now, we know. I mean, my goodness, if you're not on top of the news right that quickly, you're going to miss it. So, and I think that's why we see a lot of that information come out that maybe isn't as well researched as we're used to in the past, us of a certain age, right? It just changes. It changes so quickly.
Agreed. And when I talked to earlier, Shay, about our backgrounds being in communications, I just remember training about what was real sources for news. And now that's evolved, right? It has, because it's become who can get you the news the fastest, you know, um, it's not this idea that only these people can bring you, you know, um, real sourced news. But you're right, it is up to you who's receiving the news, right,
Mhm.
to continue with that critical lens of, does this make sense? How is this possible? Can I corroborate it with other sources? And we forget that, right? Because then we want to carry the news fast to our friends, and we want to post about it and tweet about it and all this other stuff. And did you believe it? And so it's something that we all need to be cognizant of, right?
Mhm.
That critical lens when we think about what it is that we're hearing and even seeing sometimes, right? Because I don't know about you, but I've been hearing a lot about filters, and
Mm.
I was completely shocked about what filters can do for, re-imaging video and every, because I've always been asking for a Beyonce filter, and people have always laughed at me, but now I know that that's probably a possibility in the very coming weeks, and all I know is let me know about when Beyonce's filter gets released, because I'd like that. But that's a real thing, and you have, kids, thinking that that's what they need to look like, but nobody can look like that,
That's
because it's a
right.
filter. So it's kind of scary. You have to be critically aware about what can and cannot happen, and what's real and what's not real.
And I think that's the power of higher education, Melinda. It's teaching, educating the students to sort of have that critical lens, right? And
Hmm.
I think that's what keeps me coming back in higher education, is the fact that that's the work that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
There's opportunity for disagreement and exploration of ideas. That's completely fine, right? But it's also having that critical view of things and sort of being able to evaluate,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely. Agreed. Couldn't agree more. You couldn't have said it better.
Uh,
And as we wind down with the interview, we talked a lot about higher ed, your path in higher ed, your involvement in NACADA, being director. So busy, busy schedule. But what is Shay doing outside of higher ed? What kind of interests do you have?
Matt, I saw that question as I was prepping yesterday. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one. That's the question that always gets me. It's okay. So I do have 4 grandchildren. Uh, at the time of taping, they are ages 4, 5, 6, and 7. Very
Wow.
lucky. They all live in the same city. I get to see them quite a bit. So I'm very engaged grandma, which is lovely. And so they take up a lot of my time outside of work. It's mostly family, and I think that coming through these last couple of years, it was a tough couple of years, and both my daughters are single moms, so I became sort of the extension of support for both of them. Happy to do it. I mean, I was a single mom too, so I know how important that is to just have that other support network, right? So, and so that's I feel is a great investment of my time in, you know, loving and nurturing and mentoring my grandchildren, who are, it's so much more fun to have grandchildren than children. I'm just going to say that. It is so much more fun. Um, they're a delight, and they keep me young, and they keep me hopeful for the future. Actually, it is lovely to see. I mean, we have no shortage of distressing news that we can see every day, but being able to work with young children, and it does give me hope for the future, and um, which is lovely. So outside of work, it's family. It's mostly family. So
Okay.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
And if anyone has any questions or wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
well, the best way to reach me, you could reach me through LinkedIn, or you could reach me. I'm not so much on Twitter anymore because it just makes my head hurt trying to keep track of everything. You could also just reach me at Mount Royal University in our directory. I'm happy to, or NACADA. There's you can get a hold of me through NACADA. I'm here, and I would love to chat with people. In fact, that has happened over the last couple of years, where I've had people reach out and ask sort of those mentorship type questions about advising and getting involved with advising. And a few of those folks do stay in touch, which is lovely. So yeah, I'm definitely available and happy to chat with people about anything related to higher education, not just advising. So And in
Wonderful.
fact, I do get that as well. People are like, my daughter doesn't know what to do. She's sick. And I'm like, come on, let's have a coffee. We'll get it sorted
Exactly.
out.
Exactly. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shay, for spending some time with Matt and myself. It was wonderful learning more about you.
This has been fun. This has been a lot of fun. Felt good. So it was a good conversation. It was great to get to know both of you and spend some time with some of my favorite Nakata people.
Yes,
Yay.
absolutely.
Awesome.